Welcome back to the Afterthoughts. This is episode 5. The Afterthoughts is an extension of my Substack, Live in Labor, liveinlabor.substack.com. And there, in this place, it's usually when I'm kind of going through what I wrote this month and just kind of rehashing it a little bit, thinking about some things I might have left on the table, or maybe I wanted to say differently or wanted to add to, something along those lines. Normally, it is audio only, but as you can see this month, I'm testing out some video. I've downloaded a bunch of apps. I'm trying some things. I got a fancy microphone. So, we're just figuring things out. What you'll also notice is that the Afterthoughts is normally behind a paywall. But this month, I've decided to not do that. And instead, I wanted to bring it to you live and direct. And that is mostly because, one, I want you to share with your friends. Help me grow, live in labor, and what I'm doing here on the Substack platform. And two, I didn't write a free post this month. So I figured to make up for my absence of a free post, I would give the Afterthoughts for free. This month, the Afterthoughts is mostly a Q&A. I asked for questions and listeners submitted some, so let's get to those. First question is, if Jesus were to return in the flesh tomorrow, what would you ask him and why? That is a great question. I don't know. Honestly, what comes to mind first is I think I would ask Jesus, why was all of this so hard? Right? Life has been hard. It's been long. Man, James tells us to count it all joy when we encounter trials of various kinds. And I think I've had enough counting for joy. Yeah, that's not a great answer, but I think in this moment, that's probably what's on my heart is, Jesus, why? Why? Next question is, if there was one area you wish there was a greater Christian presence, in what would you choose and why? So this question is asking in particular, like what industry, sphere, something. I think for our current cultural moment, I would probably want a greater Christian presence in either politics or business. And the reason is in politics, I think in America right now, our life is run by politics. Like we're we've divided everything along political lines. I'm far left, I'm far right, and the kind of divides and bifurcations have just grown deeper and deeper. And I think that in order to combat that, we need more Christians who are politicians. And that's not to say we need a Christian party that's pure Christian values, because I think that there are good Christian folks who are Democrats and there are good Christian folks who are Republicans. In the end, though, we need less of the extremism. We need more options amongst our parties. It seems right now that from the top of the ticket to the bottom, someone can't get elected unless they are at the most extreme end. And I would love to see Christians in those spaces being the light pushing back against dark places. Now, the other arena I said was business. I'm pretty sure I said business. I'm not going to rewind to find out. But I would love to see more Christians in business. And a big reason for this is we can argue about what the best economic system is, right? The argument is, are you socialism versus capitalism? I think that for where we live in our capitalistic society, and I'm not some like bleeding heart socialist, so don't hear that as you hear this. But I do see an ever growing gap between the haves and the have nots. And conscious capitalism, as some people would like to call it, it's few and far in between. And so I would love to see more Christians taking a redemptive view of the business world and leveraging their wealth and their resources and whatever it is that they're building for the sake of the flourishing of others. I spend a lot of my time in the fitness and nutrition space. And it kills me to see what is in some of these products, what is passed off, the corners that are cut to make a buck. And I think that if we had more Christians there, what would it look like for them to say, we're going to make less money to bring you higher quality? We are going to choose to donate a portion of our profits for insert, whatever your cause is here. So I would love to see some more redemptive work coming in that area. The next question is, why did you choose to be a pastor? This is a great question because I don't know why. No, I think that God has gifted me and wired me in some particular ways. And the skills that he's given me, I think I'm a pretty decent preacher, but that's like 5% of the job. I think I'm a pretty good teacher. I really think that God has called me to teach on some level. And so because of that, I pressed the button and it started playing something, so I hope it doesn't come through. But as you can see my distraction, let me regain my train of thought. He has gifted me as a teacher. He's gifted me as a preacher. But I think mostly God has given me a shepherd's heart. That word pastor means something. That word means shepherd, right? A shepherd is someone who takes care of their sheep, who looks after their sheep, who has an empathetic heart, a caring and compassion for the hurting, the lost, the broken. And I was and am all of those things. And when I see it in others, when I see a need, I'm drawn to that. And I think that our greatest need is to know the truth and beauty of Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Now, one thing I say to people is that the title does not make me who I am. So whether or not I'm a pastor, it's not going to change who I am. This is why I've been so bad at so many of my jobs. Because when I wasn't plugging away on the numbers the way I should have been, it's because I was talking to my coworkers about deep soul issues. Right? Like I remember working in finance and this guy, we would just get into these debates about religion. Not because I was trying to have these conversations, but because it just kept coming up. He would tell me that religion is for poor people, that they need it because they don't have anything else. And I would go, well, that's an interesting statement. Tell me more. Tell me why you think that, why you believe that. And I just laid out the hope that I have in Jesus. That was it. A couple of months later, after they fired me, and rightfully so, he calls me and he tells me, hey, thanks for having those conversations with me. I believe now. I didn't go out, with the intention of being this great evangelist and converting this man. I think what is in you is going to come out of you, that the ways in which God has wired you will show up in your life consistently. And so if you're one of those people listening right now and you're thinking, man, I want to be a pastor, I think the world around you will know. Your church community will know. And God will probably put that desire in your heart. And I say all of this with no intentions of retiring a pastor. There's nothing about this call that says vocationally it's for life or has to be for life. I actually think it's a good thing when we hold it loosely and we have and possess the ability to do and be other things. Let's see. What is your most prized possession? I don't know. I own a lot of sneakers, but not really. I just got this lovely little thing, the Ultimate Warrior wrestling buddy from 1993. Also got the Hulk Hogan to match. I am just a giant man child trying to make up for his broken childhood. That might be how you explain that. But my most prized possession, I really don't know. I don't have anything that off the top of my head that I hold, so dearly. Everything can be replaced, and yeah, everything can be replaced. I think. I don't know. Do you think it's true when people say you are what you love? I actually think that is 1,000% true. Jesus says that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So much of Old Testament imagery and literature is centered around the bent of our hearts, what stirs our affections. It ultimately, what we love is what we worship, and what we worship is what we become like. And so when we think about what we love, why we love it, the impact and effect that that has on us, yeah, I think you are what you love. And if you're trying to figure out what do I love, consider where your heart and mind goes in the idle moments, which is an Easter egg for an upcoming question. Consider how your time is spent. When your time is free and you can do whatever you want, where does your time go? Consider where your money goes. That is always a good one, right? I was just telling this to my church last week. My wallet, my bank account says that I value sneakers, food, and books more than anything else. And it's a sobering thought knowing that I am not as generous as I could be. I do not give as much as I could or should. I waste money. I waste time. I waste time with this thing, with my phone, scrolling, looking at nuggets of nothing. I don't love Instagram more than anything else in my life. But I think there are times where my screen time would say that I do. And that's something that I have to wrestle with, something I have to be mindful of. If I am saying that I am a person whose heart has been solely enraptured by Jesus, what does it look like for me to reflect that? Let's see. What's the biggest way you see God working in your family, even when times are tough? Unity. I think my wife and I being on the same page, that's a tough word apparently, championing each other, holding each other down, caring for one another, and loving one another. Like, that's nothing but the work of God. That is Him drawing us together when times are rough, when we're battling our way through things. That is His goodness and grace and mercy working in our lives. In your idle time, what's on your mind? So I just alluded to this a minute ago, but I would say that in my idle time, I'm often thinking about the future. I'm thinking about security. I'm I'm honestly thinking about more. And that's, you know, I'm not embarrassed to admit that because I recognize that the bent of my heart, my entire life, has been the word more. It has been discontentment. It has been this desire and hope to be better, to do better. And there's an idol there. There is an idol there, right? Growing up poor, you can't help but as you get older to say, I don't ever want to be back in that place. I don't ever want to put my family in that place. And therefore, what do I need to do to get there? And this is another thing that I'm hinting to that I'll talk about in a minute. But that's probably it's not an all good thing. Like, it's good to want to take care of my family. It's good to desire to see to do better and like achieve more. But when those things become ultimate, when my happiness, when my security, when my hope is found in achievement or anything like that, it's idolatry. And it's a dangerous, dangerous place to be in. And I wish I could say, hey, I've beaten that. I've gotten over it. I've figured it out. But I haven't. I haven't. I'm working on it by God's grace. I just preached this in a message this past week where I said I am a discontent and unhappy man. But what I know is that I am not as discontent and unhappy as I was 15 years ago when I first started walking with Jesus. And by God's grace, 15 years from now, I will not be this discontent and this unhappy. And as I pursue Jesus and I get to know Jesus more and I'm trying to trust him more by his grace, I'll get there. So that wraps up all of the questions. And then I had a couple of random thoughts, things that have been on my mind. My mind doesn't just go to doing better and having more in the idle times. I spend a lot of time thinking about questions and kind of the big things of life. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately has been the four source idols that Tim Keller talks about: comfort, control, power, and approval. I was sitting in a counseling session one day, and my counselor said to me, helping is just the sunny side of control. And, she said that. I kind of tucked it in the back of my mind, and I didn't think too much about it until a couple of weeks ago. I had wrote it down. So I've been seeing it on my whiteboard for months now. And then I started thinking, if helping is the sunny side of control, what's the dark side? I think the dark side of control is it's dominating people, right? So the sunny side is the part that looks good, but in the end, that source idol is sitting under there, still being the root cause of why we're doing what we do, right? So if what I want is control, then I'm going to be overly helpful. And it's going to look good because I'm helping so much, but in the end, I'm helping so that I can have control. The dark side of that is dominating people. It's controlling people. It's bulldozing the conversation. It's the my way or the highway sort of dynamic. That's bad. But what about the other ones? Comfort. The dark side of comfort is laziness. I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to move. I'm just going to sit in this where I am. The sunny side is my problem, right? I think comfort is probably my chief source idol. The sunny side of comfort is investment, right? I'm working really hard so that I can get this. I'm putting this money away. I'm stockpiling so I can buy that. I am hoping that getting to this place of financial independence can buy my freedom, can buy my time. Look at me. I'm working so hard. I'm investing in this dream. It looks good to the world, but in the end, the idol that sits there is the same idol of comfort that is not going to bring peace. So often people find that when they reach the level of comfort that they were hoping for, they still don't find the peace that they were longing for. So there's two more. There's power and approval. The dark side of power, as we know, is manipulation. Right? How can I move people around? How can I orchestrate the chessboard in such a way that I'm the one in control? I'm pulling the strings behind the scenes. But the sunny side of that is I'm looking at my board. It's connections, right? It's the networking, the schmoozing, the people who like to name drop. I was with such and such the other day. Oh, I'm good friends with them. Oh, me and him, we golf sometimes. Yeah. I had lunch with that person. I can get you in. You need a word. You need someone to grease the wheels for you. Make the phone call. That love of power will make you the greatest networker on earth. It'll make you the person who actually is not afraid of confrontation, because that person who loves power loves to exert that power in confrontation, and you'll make it look good. Oh yeah, I had the hard conversation and I was able to get what I wanted. I did that thing. I took it for the team. Power is a dangerous one. And last one is approval. I think we all know the dark side of approval, most would say, is people pleasing. It's where you're doing so much for everyone else. You live your life in the hopes of finding acceptance from what others say and think about you. The sunny side of that is the chameleon. It's the person who does whatever they need to do to get along in any room. They take Paul's words of becoming all things to all men to heart. It is, hey, I'm going to be whoever I need to be in this room. I'm going to know all of the facts and all of the knowledge, and I'm going to be able to say anything to anybody, life of the party, accepted everywhere I go. I am beloved because I need approval. So I'm probably going to either write or podcast some more around these four ideas because I think there's something really good there. And I want to take the time to kind of mine that a little bit more. I'm going to take a sip of some tea now. I'm not doing any editing. I'm shooting this late at night. So you're getting the raw, uncut footage, but that's real life. Please remember to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe to Live and Labor. That is the Substack, liveandlabor.substack.com. We exist to provide simple teachings on living in the way of Jesus. All right, here we are at the 21-minute mark. So I'm going to wrap this up with one final thought. And I'm going to write about this one more. But it's about Gen Z. And my question for you, as I know my audience is primarily millennials and up, but I'm starting to get some Gen Z creep in there, so thank you. I want to know, does Gen Z matter to you? And the reason I'm asking this question is because we are losing them at an alarming rate. My generation, the millennials, we started the trend of the nuns. It is those who describe themselves on the census as having no religious affiliation. All of the census, all of the data, all of the polls are telling us that Gen Z is leaving the church and they're not coming back. But not only that, right? Because I think it was Mark Twain who says there are lies, damn lies, and statistics or something like that. I talk to these kids. I spend way too much time with these kids, if you ask me. But listening to them, they want nothing to do with Jesus, with the church. The ones who are church kids are barely holding on. I gave a talk at a high school this week. And as I'm giving this talk at the high school and I'm talking to the students, they had a lot of good questions. And, I'm answering their questions and they look at me and they said, no one really takes the time to engage with us like this. Our parents, our aunts and uncles, they don't have the time. And I'm starting to wonder as I sit in some meetings about the future of the church and what we're going to do. Are we answering the questions that they're asking? Are we thinking about the questions that they're asking? Do we even know what they're asking? Because the truth is, 20 years from now, the 65-year-olds will likely be gone. And what you're hoping for, so historically, right, this is how we've always assumed that it would work, is that from 18 to 25, you're going to go out and you're going to do your own thing. And once you get married and have kids, you'll come back to church. Which, first of all, if you are a pastor, church leader, ministry leader, anything like that, that is a presumptuous, lazy, and intellectually dishonest model for ministry. But what we are seeing now with this generation in particular, again, a lot of these trends started with us. But what we're seeing now is that these kids are getting married significantly later. So if they're getting married in their 30s, 40s, am I supposed to wait until then? But also, have y'all talked to people in Gen Z lately? Have you asked them about having kids? Whereas it was assumed that we would all go on to procreate one day, this generation sees having kids as optional. And I cannot tell you the amount of conversations I've had where they're like, nah, that's not happening for me. Does that mean it's true for everybody? Of course not, right? The things I thought at 16, 17, thank God, are not the things that I think today. But do we bank their future on hoping that they'll just change their minds? Because we're losing them well before 18. We're losing them probably by middle school, if we're honest. They are being shaped and formed in a world that is different from the one that we came up with. It doesn't mean that they have it harder or we had it easier. What like no, this doesn't have to become some kind of oppression Olympics on who had the worst childhood. It is okay to recognize that we are occupying two different worlds. I am glad that I did not go through puberty with social media, but they are. And they're also going through puberty, being inundated with all sorts of information and opinions and false narratives and some true narratives that we're not even taking the time, nor do we have the relational space and equity to combat. And so by the time they hit 13, they're already like, I'm good on this. And in fact, I'm so good on this. Let me tell you why this is evil or this is oppressive or just the notion that you believe in God is silly. And so my question is, does this generation matter to you? Because if they do, then what are we willing to do to reach them right now? I harp on this a lot, but I firmly believe in this idea of intergenerational relationships. You know why? Because if we got a bunch of 15-year-olds in the room leading each other, that is only going to lead to disaster. If we got a bunch of 19-year-olds leading the 15-year-olds, that is going to lead to disaster. Who do you think is shaping and forming them right now? Who do you think their primary influences are? It's people who are their age and slightly above them. And I honestly believe what they need to see is investment from those in the church who are older than them, who care about them, who are willing to be patient enough to walk with them through life as they say the stupid and ridiculous things that teenagers do. When I read scripture and I see that the saints gather together daily, I don't see anything in there about youth ministry. I don't see anything in there about a group for people in their 20s and a group for 60 and above. All of these wonderful little bifurcations and segments that we love to create, you see nowhere in scripture. And I have to believe that that is what has led, in many ways, in parts, I'd say, to the degradation of discipleship that exists in so many of our churches today. What the 15-year-old needs is the 25-year-old and the 35-year-old, the 45 and the 55-year-old. And you know what that 35-year-old needs? The 35-year-old needs the 15-year-old too, right? Because at 35, you're still too young to be dressing like you're old, but you also don't need to dress like you're 15. So that 15-year-old kind of helps moderate you, helps keep you relevant-ish. But no, there is a lot to be learned, perspective to be gained through the eyes of that 15-year-old that you as a 35-year-old should find value in. Because although they are teenagers, although they're young, it doesn't mean that they are without value. And I think, and I'll end on this note, but there's a word in scripture that I love that describes how God is with us. And that word is long suffering. What God gives us is patient investment. He takes his time with us. He is kind to us in all of our mess. And I think that as we seek to be the people who model Jesus to this world, one of the things that we can model to this generation is patience and long suffering. It is taking time with them, to nurture them, to develop them over the course of time, so that when 18 comes and they walk out that door, they want to come back in. That's my time for this week. I appreciate you. If you've made it all the way through, listen, Share this with a friend. Tell them to subscribe. liveandlabor.substack.com. And until next time, people, may we live and labor well. Look out on Tuesday. I've got a special post coming. See you soon.